Good late afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. Today is February 24. It is 5:03, and we're here for the meeting of the Racial Equity and Policing Commission for Salt Lake City. And we certainly appreciate everyone's attendance, city staff, commissioners, police, chief of police, and others. We appreciate your attendance here this afternoon. Hopefully everyone has had a chance to take a look at the agenda, review the material that was sent out, and we'll have some conversation about that in just a bit. I don't know if there's any of your officers on the call, Chief. I don't think so. I was going to welcome them to the commission. I know most, if not all, have been at a subcommittee yet, but I don't see anybody. No, there's page 2. Let me look at page 2. Maybe I'm missing folks.
Dante, I just scrolled. I don't see any, but
Okay.
they're certainly welcome, and they will certainly be involved in the subcommittee meetings. So.
Okay, I appreciate that. I will, like I said, I was going to certainly welcome them and do the introduction to the full commission to some of the officers. I believe the policies subcommittee as well as the training subcommittee has already had officers on the committee, at least at the committee meetings last week. And their participation, I think, was, at least speaking for the training subcommittee, I think it was helpful to hear some of their thoughts and engagement. I know they were at the policies subcommittee meeting. And I just feel the need to say this, and I will also say it to them, some of which I've said. We appreciate them being there, and I think the goal is to hear from them as well as from the commissioners in the engagements that are going on. And I'll say this in terms of just the engagement in the space. In all the trainings I do, I never promise a safe space, because what's safe is different for everybody. And so for me, what I always try to promise, if you will, is a comfortable enough space where they can engage authentically and respectfully and have that shared back to them. So I'll never promise a safe space, because if anybody, commissioners or police, are expecting that they might not hear something that makes them feel bad or makes them feel uncomfortable or even hurts their feelings, then this is not the conversation for them, because this is a passionate conversation. And I will certainly never apologize for the passion of the commissioners nor the passion of the officers and how they approach this conversation. For me, it's all about facilitating a conversation that is respectful and not involved with any personal attacks or comments on the individuals. Having a conversation and disagreements about a policy or approach is one thing, but certainly any personal attacks, I think, are outside the bounds of the appropriate conversations. And so hopefully that's a part of how everyone thinks that this can work with the police officers on the committees. And also know that there are some commissioners who don't want them on the commission. And I think I said that to each and every one of the officers who I had a chance to engage with. So just that's not necessarily a surprise. And that doesn't mean that there will be disrespect in those conversations. But I just think that it's important that everybody understands there are lots of different passions that are on this commission. And that's probably why they're on this commission in the first place, because they're passionate about this work and the importance of it. So I would hope that everybody feels comfortable engaging in this conversation in that way. Commissioner Powell?
And might I add respectfully that we're here to dismantle 400 years plus of systematic oppression. And so that my experience does automatically override the experience of someone who polices me and authoritizes me and tells me how I can act and how I can behave under the agreed upon social contract of our Constitution. And so as long as law enforcement is upholding their side of this social contract, then I think the constituency of our democracy can also uphold their end of that social contract. But I recall an officer saying, "My experience matters." I didn't hear him say Black Lives Matter. And that kind of starked me. So I just want to make sure that we have the right view and angle when we're allowing officers into our safe spaces, because for me, I don't feel safe. I've expressed that multiple times. And as a young person who's been a part of the grassroots movement since before the George Floyd protests, I can assure you that this needs to be more than a civic conversation, but that this is police reform work that is a part of a wider conversation going on at the national level. So I just want to make sure we're cognizant of that as we pursue forward and invite more law enforcement personnel into our circle. I trust Chief Brown. I know him on a personal level, I like to say. I can't say the same for all his officers though. So that's why I gotta feel safe putting my point of view out there as a young person, understanding that they're wearing a uniform and I'm wearing my skin color on a 24/7 basis.
Thank you, Commissioner. I appreciate that, and I certainly respect your opinion, having spent enough time in the streets myself. I will say though that their opinion does matter, or else there's no need for them to be on the commission, sitting at a committee meeting. I think their experience is why we're asking them to be here, so they can give their position and thoughts on the conversations that we're having. It doesn't mean that we're going to agree nor take their recommendations, but I think that their experience does matter and gives them the opportunity to at least offer their perspective from the work that they do, however they do it.
I appreciate your input on that, Commissioner James.
Certainly.
And I'd like to say I appreciated the people who were on our call last week who said that they just want to listen.
Mm-hmm.
I really appreciated the fact that they want to listen to hear what we have to say before judging what we're doing.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I know that, to your point, Commissioner Powell, and they have at least heard the message of what this commission is charged to do, which is provide recommendations on reform, culture change, et cetera.
I just wanted to make sure that they understood our perspective in alignment with the intentions of why this commission was formed in the first place, and that it was not to celebrate nor address the experience of a police officer, but to address the inequitable systemic policies facing marginalized communities. So that's why I'm on this commission. And I think that's why we're inviting law enforcement here to the first place. If I'm wrong, maybe I should have that addressed.
You're not wrong in my book, but I can't speak for everyone, but I appreciate you. Other thoughts, commissioners? Okay, wonderful. At the very least, it'll be in the minutes of how we've addressed this and approached this conversation. So hopefully those get shared out. So moving along the agenda, a couple things. We can see if you've had a chance to review the minutes from January 6th and January 27th. Both of those need to be approved. Since we're not in a subcommittee meeting, but in a full commission meeting, we need to approve those minutes. So we can take those one at a time and see if there's a consensus on approval for the meeting minutes of January 6th. Anyone in opposition to approval of those minutes as they were sent out?
No.
Okay. Thank you. All right, so this January 6th meeting minutes are approved as written. January 27th meeting minutes. Is there any opposition to approval of them as they've been sent out? Or any edits that need to be made to those?
I move to approve them.
I'm sorry?
I move to approve them,
Thank
the
you.
minutes.
Thank you. I wasn't trying to do Robert's Rules of Order, but we can do that. Is there a
Oh,
second?
sorry, sorry.
That's okay. That's okay.
I apologize.
No, that's fine. I know we all get used to doing how we do sometimes. I'm just trying to limit the bureaucracy if possible. Is there any opposition to the approval of the minutes or any recommended suggestions to the approval of those minutes? Okay, so then the meeting minutes of January 27th have been approved by the commission. Thank you so much. I want to make a reminder. I'm just going back, I'm kind of skipping down to other at this point, but what we talked about the last meeting regarding the safety briefing that the chief was going to put together. Coletta sent out an email and got 3 responses. The meetings are scheduled for 10 o'clock tomorrow and 1 o'clock tomorrow. She will send out an email to both of those. I would encourage you to respond to her this evening to let her know which one you want to attend. Because if there is more than 9 people, that will be a quorum and we can't do it. So then it would just be the first 9 who show up get to participate and the others don't. So it would be helpful if you could respond and she can ensure that the commissioners who wanted to be participating in that safety briefing can all be assured of a place in that. Anything I missed, Coletta?
No, that was great. Thank you, Dante.
Okay, so please respond or just show up and hope you're one of the first 9 on a call.
I want to apologize. I get so many emails, I get confused. It's like, what is what? I thought I saw one with a time that was conflicting with me, but now I've got to figure out which one that was. So you're going to resend it tonight?
Yes, I'm going to resend it to ask if you're interested either in the 10 a.m. or the 1 p.m. meeting. If you could just respond and let me know which time works best for you. I'm going to start a list to send back to the sergeant who is going to do the meeting on tomorrow to let him know which group would like to attend which meeting.
Okay. And I may not be able to because of the time, but I'll let you know.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Shiflett.
So is this on Zoom?
Can you confirm my email address? I'm not finding it.
Yes, Commissioner McDonald. I won't confirm it live because we're being taped, but I will follow up with you directly to confirm your email address.
Okay.
Thank you. Commissioner Hawkins?
This is, oh, I'm sorry, I moved my place. Is this through Zoom?
Yes.
Okay.
This will be a virtual meeting through
Thank
Zoom.
you. Okay, thank you.
And then similarly, I believe that an email has gone out, or correct me, Coletta, if I'm wrong, regarding the Partner Pair Program. And so if you're interested in that, please respond to that. And that respond with your first choice, assuming you know who that would be, and your second choice in case in case that person is already paired up. So your first choice and your second choice if you're interested in the Partner Pair Program.
And as clarified, Dante, I got an updated list today from the lieutenant. And so I will be sending those names out because I just got an updated list today. Thank you to Chief and Lieutenant Zayas for getting that list together for us. And so you'll also receive that email today with those list of names. Please respond and let me know who you would like for your selection to be.
Okay, because I did receive that, the safety one, and I responded to it. I don't remember ever getting the partner pairing. I don't know if anybody else did. So I'll look for it tonight.
Yes, Commissioner Prospero. Unfortunately, that's what I just stated. I apologize for miscommunicating. But I just received an updated list from from the lieutenant. What initially happened, so that you all will know, we did the list of officers that are assigned to the subcommittee meetings, and that request actually got intertwined with the request for partner pair. And so there was a miscommunication between parties about which list went where. And so the lieutenant and I spoke earlier today, and she sent me an updated list of those who would be willing to participate in the partner pair program. So you're going to get that list within the next hour here of those names.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Oh, you're
I'm sure Carol's the reason it got all messed up. Thanks, Carol.
Thank you, Coletta. Any other questions regarding either of those two items? Okay, great. I want to skip down just a moment for the listening sessions. Larry has to jump off in just a bit, so I want to give an opportunity for Larry to offer some updates on the listening session. So Larry, are you still available? No, he's not. He's offline. So he's already in his next component. But he has or is about to submit a report, he already sent it, with themes from the listening sessions, not the individual specific questions that some of the callers asked that would be responded to specifically by the chief and others, but just the general themes of what he heard. And that will be sent out to the subcommittees. So the subcommittees can see those themes and see or hear if there's anything particular to their subcommittees that they'd like to consider in informing the work that they're doing. Okay. There's also a conversation around adding additional listening. I'm sorry, Siobhan.
I was just going to add that it compiles the survey and the several different ways that people could participate, not just the verbal ones. And so when we say listening sessions, it's sort of a broader term just for everyone's knowledge.
Great, thank you. So all of the feedback that we received is compiled in those themes. So thank you. And then also the conversation around listening sessions, additional listening sessions specifically targeted to Pacific Islander community, the Native community, maybe the Muslim community or the Latino community. Larry is available to do that. And in saying that, has availability for maybe the end of the beginning of the second week of March, which would be around 9, 10, 11. That said, he needs a commissioner to coordinate with for each of those communities to best serve and create the best outcomes and engagement with those communities. So if we speak about the Latino community, Pacific Islander community, Native community, and Muslim community, is there a commissioner on the call who would be willing to be that point of contact for Larry to assist in supporting the best engagement with those communities? Refugee community is already being addressed by a couple of the commissioners, I believe, as is the African-American community, Commissioner Shiflett, and I think a couple of others. So we're not ignoring those communities, but specifically those communities I mentioned, Latino, Pacific Islander, Muslim, and Native communities. Is there?
I can work with Commissioner Kaili on the Pacific Islander community.
Okay.
I can obviously help with the Muslim community, but it will intersect with the refugee and the Black Americans.
Okay. And Commissioner Eldridge, I see your hand up.
Yes, I can help with the Indigenous community.
Thank you. So what I will do.
Dante?
Yeah.
I can help with the LGBTQ community, and I ask about the Hispanic community, I guess, if somebody needs help with that.
Also, Dante, I already told Larry to reach out to me to help with the
Latino community.
Latinx.
Okay.
It'd be great to have Tanya along as well, too, though.
Yeah, I was just going to reach out to Brandy.
Okay. Commissioner Powell?
I can reach out to the University of Utah Black Student Union and other minority marginalized student groups on campus. I think having student input, again, from the intersectional perspective of the grassroots activists that are actively putting in work outside of policy reform, such as feeding the homeless and documenting interactions with law enforcement, I think they should be at the table. I'd also like to work in collaboration with my African-American elders here to really launch a collaborative effort to reach out to local churches and congregations so we can invite the leaders of those congregations to give input. I think we didn't see as much youth input nor community input from the African-American community as much as I would hope to see.
Great, thank you, sir.
And I connected Larry already with the churches. I started him on that road. So hopefully that's being taken care of, but thank you.
Okay.
And I would reiterate MJ's point, mosques too. There are a lot of
Absolutely.
Black kids.
Absolutely.
I spoke with Larry and agreed that the Black Chamber would work with him on the Black community.
Okay. So what I will do was after this meeting this evening, I will send an email connecting each of you individually with Larry and the communities that you are stepping up to support that engagement with. So I'll do that email so he knows, and then he can just take it from there. Okay. Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Can MJ identify who are his elders here?
Everyone here specifically, but the people that have known me since I was a youngin' at Calvary Baptist Church.
I'm messing with you, man.
I'm claiming
I think
it.
it was Stephen Johnson.
Chief Brown, you're one of those elders. I met you in my church. Yes, sir.
I'm claiming it, MJ. I'm claiming it.
I remember the first time I was called an elder and wasn't quite sure if I was ready for that designation, but I'll take it now.
We still get respect in this generation.
Okay.
Thank you, Moises.
You're right. Is there anyone on the phone for community input? Kyle, I believe.
Yes, we have. Yep, thank you. We've got one caller, Mr. Oscar Ross Jr.
Okay.
Oscar, if you're ready.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yes, I'm ready. Hello, good afternoon to you guys who are trying to make a difference in this society. I'm just letting you know I'm a Black man. And for some reason, we're back into Civil War days. Maybe you might not understand what I'm talking about. But esoterically speaking, we have been under the gun as Black men in this country, Black people in this country, in the 21st century. Okay, so mine happened to me. My abuse that I'm speaking about happened to me on 1/11/09, and there was a lot of people that were involved in getting the idea that nothing happened to me. My point of speaking to you about this, because this is a racial equity commission in policing. In other words, you're going to try to make it different. And I just want you to take under the effect that I'm a Black man and I didn't get treated fairly. And right now it has got my health, well, not really my total health, but I got a sore shoulder from the officer that assaulted me because I got up because he wanted me to continue to sit in 27-degree weather. That was inhumane. And it doesn't seem like anybody on the police force at that time right there give me the benefit of the doubt at all. So now we're coming back a second time. And hopefully you'll look at it or take some kind of compassion for me. I have a shoulder pain. And I also like to talk about sexism. I don't know how you're going to fix that problem at the police station. I'm not going to put no fingers on anybody per se. But there's a real issue there. It hasn't been corrected. And I think that in your policy that you're attempting to make things fair as this the sex is concerned or whatever in that nature. But we must continue to make an effort to not be sexist and racist. So I'm going to conclude with the fact that You guys just need to shape up. This is a great society. I've been here 40 years next May, and a very, very sophisticated society, you know, and it's nice, but we need to shape up over there at the Salt Lake City Police Department and Salt Lake City and get things straight and make sure that we deal with a racist situation when it's a racist situation and just don't sweep it under the rug, you know. And the whole America right now is on a racist conscious level. I'm talking about black and white. That's kind of what I'm talking about. I mean, the other people are involved too, but we, in this society, we must clean it up. And I think I'm going to conclude with that. Thank you very much, and I'll holler at you at a later date. And go Jazz. Bye.
Thank you, sir, for your comments. Is there anyone else on the line?
Dante, I have Beverly Hawkins in the Zoom room.
We have no one else on the line.
Okay, you have Beverly Hawkins in the Zoom room?
Yes.
Okay.
I am just observing on behalf of the League of Women Voters. Thank you.
Thank you, Beverly.
Thank you, Ms. Hawkins. And so there's nobody else then, correct?
Correct. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. All right. Now the exciting world of budget to be presented by city staff. And I know Jennifer and her and others will make this a riveting presentation. So take it away.
Really set me up there. We all know how the budget is, but it is a pretty important thing to understand. Hi, I'm Jennifer Bruno, and I'm a budget analyst for the Salt Lake City Council. My colleague Ben Ludke and I give a version of this training to new city council members when they first join the council, in large part to help them understand how the budget is really one of those key vehicles that they can use to implement the policy changes and hopes they have for the city, right? That's why they run for office, is to make those changes. And so along with that, we're hoping that by helping this commission understand how the budget's put together, the process, how the process works, that it can help this commission make some informed recommendations that will help the city kind of continue this work towards increasing racial equity through budget changes. It's not an easy thing to understand in one presentation. We're not going to try to explain it in one presentation, but we're hoping to give just a general overview that will hopefully spur some follow-up discussions and conversation and engagement with this commission. And hopefully we can be of help to this commission as you guys continue your work. So with that, I will ask my colleague to share the slides if he's still on. There we go. Okay. So we call this Budget 101 because, you know, it's like sort of the first step of many in understanding the budget. So next slide, Ben. This is one thing that I think about a lot as like a touchstone is the budget is really the expression of your priorities. You know, don't tell me that your priority is something, show me how you spend your money, and then that's what tells me your priority is. And I think that much of the work that has gone on in the last year has shown that. Next slide. From our council perspective, why the budget matters is that it's one way to communicate the council's priorities, not just council, mayor also. Of course, it funds basic core city services, right? The trash has to get picked up, the streets have to get cleaned, potholes have to get filled. But it can also be where you're most likely to see change in the community is through funding of new priorities. It's a key component to set a financial plan for the next year, obviously, because we have to budget from year to year and we have to plan for future needs, especially as it relates to infrastructure and city buildings and things like that. And then one key component of the city's work in the budget space is to be public and transparent and public as possible about the city's budget trade-offs and choices. That's something that we continue to work on and refine each year. And so we're just trying to keep improving in that space. Next slide. So the timeline of the budget process is important to understand just so that this commission can figure out, and as staff, we're also trying to figure out sort of what are the points that make sense to sort of plug in to the city budget process. January, this is just a view into sort of the internal workings of the city budget process, and we'll talk about how to engage later. In January, personal services are projected, meaning what is the cost for next year's payroll, and revenues are estimated. So our city finance department works with all kinds of data points to figure out sort of how much money will we have to work with in the next year. Then in a February timeframe, departments receives general guidance from the mayor on how they should put together their budget. They may also at that point kind of figure out what are their policy priorities, right? So if they have a specific initiative, that's when they'll sort of put together their proposal for that initiative. And that's when they present them in March and April. Because of our form of government, we have a mayor council form of government. It's really the mayor's role to weigh all of those proposals in context with each other, figure out what could fit within existing revenue or if new revenue is needed, and then balance the budget in April. And so that's when those really hard deliberations occur in the mayor's office. Next slide. Then the mayor presents that fully baked package that is balanced to the city council on the first Tuesday in May. That's a public meeting. At that point, that's when the budget becomes a public document. And so that's really when I view this sort of traditional public process beginning, because that's when our conversations turn to the public side. So every Tuesday in May, the council picks apart the mayor's recommended budget, department by department. Sometimes we organize it by topic area if there's a topic area that's of specific interest. And the council holds public hearings in May and June to accept public comment on those specific things. Then the council deliberates through June to make tweaks to the mayor's budget if needed or if desired. And by state law has to adopt a balanced budget by the end of June. If that balanced budget includes a tax increase, then state law outlines this very boring process of noticing that concludes with a truth in taxation hearing in August, which is a public hearing, so that the taxpayers know we are raising tax or we're proposing to raise taxes, and here's when you can come talk to the council about it. And then the rest of the year, I would say the administration is continually refining and examining if any changes need to be made to budget. So if emergencies come up that need money, they'll propose budget amendments, or if revenues are unanticipated, they'll come to council for those tweaks. So next slide. I'll probably skip past this one. This is just one of those ways that council staff helps the council implement the priorities that they come to us with, is we identify any relationship that those priorities have with the budget, right? Some priorities are very obviously budget related, like funding for streets. Other priorities have tangential relationships to the budget, like police reform. There might be some policy changes that need to be implemented that don't have any budget impact, and then there may be some that do have budget impact. So council staff sort of helps sort which belong in the budget. One thing that's interesting to understand about the budget is that it's just under $2 billion, which is quite a bit, but most of that are enterprise funds. Those operate like a business, and laws are set up that dictate that we can't essentially dip into those funds to help our general expenses. So like the airport is its own fund. All of their funding is sort of, we like to call it a silo. It's in its own silo. They have to raise the money that they need to operate and can only spend the money they use to operate. Same thing with water, the water fund. So the general fund, which is the fund that most of us talk about when we're talking about moving money in and out of the police department, is closer to 330 million. Non-departmental budget is the largest slice of the general fund budget pie, and so we like to spend a little extra time explaining it because it's a non-departmental department. Is kind of a funny thing. It's where expenses go that don't belong to one specific department, like capital improvements, like memberships to, the Economic Development Corporation of Utah, things like that. But the council reviews those expenses line by line in the public meeting. Next slide. So this is a fund breakdown. So this is to show you of that, essentially $2 billion budget. You can see most of it is the airport fund. So next slide. And then within the general fund, you can see that the non-departmental is the largest kind of slice of that pie. Police and public services are next. Public services is kind of a catch-all. Streets and parks are in public services. And so that's just sort of a budget orientation. Next slide. One thing that's both interesting and frustrating about the city budget is that it's mostly people. It's a service-oriented organization, and so personal services, which is salaries, is most of our budget. And that the reason I share that is because in the space where we're talking about how to shift budgets and how to change budgets, frequently you're dealing with a lot less flexibility than I think most of us would like, right? And so we've figured out creative ways in recent years to still be flexible with personal services dollars, holding open vacancies, things like that. But it is one of those budget realities that we have to deal with when the council asks us what kind of change can we make. Many times our limiting factor is that most of the budget is personal services. Next slide. I'll skip through some of these. These are just some budget tools. Maybe we can go over those if the commission is interested, but let's skip past these. And skip past this. Okay, now I'll turn it over to my colleague, Ben Ludke, to go over this.
Hello, my name's Ben Ludke. I'm a budget and policy analyst with the council office. The next several slides are highlighting council actions on the police department during the annual budget. So this was May and June last year. The first item on the list is $100,000 that the council put into a holding account for the operations of this commission. The council knew it would cost a certain amount, but we didn't know exactly how much. So the $100,000 was a placeholder. 3 months ago, the council, after going through the bid process, selecting the facilitators, et cetera, they approved a total of $360,000 for the operations of this commission through the end of the fiscal year, which is June 30th. The second item is $2.8 million the council took out of the police department budget and put into a holding account in the non-departmental budget, as Jen mentioned earlier. The council discussed using these funds to implement changes in the police department based on the upcoming audit findings and recommendations from multiple sources, including the mayor, this commission, the public, and others. It's important to note that moving these funds to non-departmental reduced the police department budget for this fiscal year. So the council took the 2.8 million and put it in a holding account. Next fiscal year, it's to be decided if that 2.8 million goes back to the police department or could go to totally different uses. $322,800 is another holding account the council created during the annual budget last year. It's a combination of ongoing training money and one-time additional funding. At the time, I should clarify, the department still has funding for trainings. They are still doing trainings for police officers. A bigger issue for the department is training means an officer is not available for other police work, such as patrol. So the recent increase of officers leaving employment with the city means less time available for training this fiscal year. The council was looking at this funding in the annual budget to accelerate the pace that officers complete de-escalation training and implicit bias training. The funding would have gone to police officer overtime so that it didn't take away from the officers doing other police work, like investigations, for example. Ultimately, the council wasn't sure what the best training was for the officers and decided to put this funding in a holding account pending recommendations from this commission on what trainings should be prioritized. So this commission's training recommendations could potentially be implemented using this $322,000 holding account. The item below that is body cameras, tasers, and related software, and paying to store the video files. The mayor's recommended budget had a smaller amount, a little less than half, the $512,000. And this would have meant that some officers would not have had video recordings, or they would have been forced to use cell phone video recordings when interacting with the public. The council decided to provide this 1.2 million of ongoing funding, so 1.2 million each year moving forward, so that every officer has a body camera, has a taser, and then the software and the data support for the video. And the council members deliberated this at multiple meetings, and they commented that while the body cameras have not been shown to reduce use of force incidents, they do improve the accountability and transparency for everyone involved in those police interactions. And for those policy priorities, they approved the funding.
And I'll just jump in and add real quick. I think that because they viewed it as something that achieved the larger city goal of transparency, that it belonged in the non-departmental budget rather than the police department budget. And so that's why some of those dollars, even though they're used by police officers, are not located in the police department budget. It also gives a certain level of oversight directly from the finance department as opposed to within the police department budget. It's kind of a technical term, but
so the next item is also related to body cameras. It's $93,000. The next generation of body cameras have several improvements and new capabilities. This includes higher resolution video, especially in dim lighting and at night, and no external wires, so they're more rugged in the field. And they have the ability to automatically activate. The council added this $93,000 so that all police vehicles can be equipped with the hardware that allows automatic activation of body cameras. So when one officer activates a body camera, then all other body cameras can be automatically activated within a certain radius, like 100 feet. There are other options, such as automatically activating the body camera when one officer draws their firearm. Last I heard, the police department was negotiating with the vendor for the body cameras, and so I don't know the specific capabilities, but these were the options that we're aware of for the next generation of body cameras. The second item is the social worker program funding.
Jennifer, Ben, the question real quick. Does that include the data storage related to the body cams? And maybe you could spend just 1 minute. I don't want you to go into too deep into the weeds, but does it include the storage and other supporting costs?
Good question. The prior item, the 1.2 million, that includes unlimited data storage. And previously it was paid for separately, but those were all bundled together in the 1.2 million line item.
Thank you.
Yep. The social worker program, the council shifted the funding out of the police department and into non-departmental. They also added $81,000 for 3 vacant social worker positions so that they could be filled faster instead of waiting for the hiring freeze to end in January. The council expressed interest in evaluating the social worker program for potential changes, such as moving it to another department, expanding the program, or looking at alternative models for mental health crisis response. This is a really cutting edge area in terms of city services And we're looking at several pilot programs in other cities that are using social workers, nurses, paramedics as an alternative to law enforcement, and sometimes with them in a co-responder model.
Is this the program where they're paired with the CIT detectives? Is that what we're talking about?
That is correct, Dante.
Okay, thank you.
This slide is a summary of the current staffing in the police department. There's 711 employees, full-time employees. And I'll clarify, there's a few exceptions of grant-funded positions that are not counted in this because they're shorter-term positions, maybe for a couple years. Of the 711, 569 are sworn police officers. There are also 20 authorized but unfunded police officers. This is a bit of a unique tool the council created for the police department. It's meant to alleviate and smooth out the fluctuations from employee turnover. So what would happen, 20 police officers would say, I'm going to retire this year. I'm giving you an early heads up. The police department would have to wait for those 20 officers to retire before they could recruit and hire replacements. And this would cause the department to have less than full staffing for extended periods of time. Providing 20 authorized but unfunded positions means the police department can start recruiting and hiring before those current officers retire and stay closer to full staffing more of the year. And then the last category are the civilian staff. There's 122 civilian staff, and they do a wide array of functions within the department, from assisting with basic IT work to the social workers, the crime intelligence analysts who create the maps, look for trends in the data, to the forensic scientists that are testing DNA at the state crime lab. And there are many other civilians as well.
Ben, where do the vacancy savings from the empty positions show up in the budget?
So the vacancy savings are typically captured in the annual budget, and they're different every year because you never quite know how many people are going to leave employment. This past year being a really good example. The number of officers that left employment, I think it was double what was expected.
Right.
And an important point on the vacancy savings is that they're one time, because the person in that position will not be there for X number of months. You only have those months of savings. You still need funding for the person who's going to fill that position maybe halfway through the year.
Okay, I understand that.
This slide, it shows the staffing increases and decreases over the last 9 years. The decreases on the left were all civilian positions, and some of these were functions that were transferred to the IT department in the city instead of having them inside the police department. The increases on the right side were recent in the last 3 years. The 2017-18 was increasing those authorized but unfunded positions we discussed a minute ago from 10 to 20. In 2018 to 2019, the council added 27 new police officers. And recognizing when you add police officers, you're adding a workload to the civilian staff in the department. They also added 13 civilian positions, which are listed in parentheses. And then there were 15 existing police officers paid by a federal grant from the Department of Justice. And the grant ended. The city decided to retain those officers and added them onto the city budget as permanent positions. And then the last increase was 2019-2020, when 23 additional police officers were added to the department, and 66 airport police with 2 civilians working at the airport. Those airport positions already existed, but the city police department and the Airport Police Department were merged to create one unified police force. And this was done to be more efficient and more effective. Instead of having duplicative systems for two different law enforcement systems within the city, they could just have one. And it makes it easier for officers to work at the airport or other areas in the city and cover shifts when needed. This chart is summarizing 9 years of the department's budget, which are the blue columns, and staffing of full-time employees, which is the orange line. You can see there were incremental increases of the budget and the staffing from 2013 to about 2017. And then that dynamic changed in the last 3 years, where 2018 to 2020, the number of full-time employees, FTEs, and the budget both went up significantly. In the last year, 2021, the number of full-time employees is flat. It's still 711, the same as the year before, but the budget decreased. And this is the only time the budget for the police department decreased since 2013.
Well, why did it decrease?
So if you remember earlier in the presentation, there was that $2.8 million holding account.
Yes.
As well as that holding account, $322,000 for training.
Mm-hmm.
Those came out of the police department, and that decreased the department's budget. So that funding, that decrease is still sitting there, but it's not in the police department budget anymore.
Also, the funding for the social worker program. The FTEs were still in the police department, but the funding for the program itself is outside of the police department now.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Ben,
Yes.
that large increase, I hope I'm not talking over somebody. I think it was 2020. Is that include the airport, the 66 officers that came from the airport?
Yes, good observation. You're correct.
Okay, so there was a steady increase, and probably like 2 years in a row, there's a little bit more incremental, and then that 2020 just really kind of skyrocketed because of so many that came in. What were the reasons that there was a higher rate of increase of FTEs and budget? Is it because larger population in the city, or match what other cities have, or?
So it's difficult to compare the police between cities because every city has different crime levels, and the crime is so unique between cities, and the crime level fluctuates all the time.
If I could add also, that was the year that the city made the operational decision to bring the airport police officers under the umbrella of the police department. And so that was both budget and FTEs transferred into the police department budget,
Yeah,
which
I
was
think
like
the
a
year
one-time.
before that, or maybe even 2 years before that, there was a more than regular increase.
Yeah.
Before, I was just wondering.
That was when the council added the social worker program as well as more police officers.
The council had also heard from the public for a couple of years in a row that they wanted more police officers. And the focus was on officers having time to be proactive. Instead of going from call to call, they wanted officers to go to community council meetings, to go to basketball games at high schools, to do community policing. And that required more officers. And there were a couple surveys done, and they showed that increasing public safety was one of the main priorities for the city residents. And so based on the survey feedback, the feedback they've been hearing for a couple years from residents, the council wanted to make a push to add police officers to the department.
And that
It was more community-based.
Sorry. Go ahead.
So it was a community-based response.
Mm-hmm.
The council was able to, on a one-time basis, increase our sales tax percentage because of the prison relocation into the city. And so the city thought that we didn't want to increase that sales tax revenue without understanding really in detail from the community what they wanted, what they hoped to see from that increase in revenue from the city. And so that was the purpose of those extensive surveys that were sent out. So public safety was one of the items identified, transportation was one of the items identified, affordable housing, and
streets.
Thank you, Ben. And so each of those categories received a bump in funding that year.
3 questions that I'd like to pose. One, the holding fund. This is a fiscal year budget. At the end of the year, what happens to the holding fund? Secondly, how can the department access additional funds from the holding funds? And then thirdly, what impact do you see from moving the prison into Salt Lake City?
Good questions. Let me take the first 2. The funds in the holding accounts. The council can choose to keep them in the holding account in the next annual budget, and they can stay there as long as the council wants. If the council does nothing, the funding will drop to the city's rainy day fund, the city's savings account, to respond to emergencies and unplanned expenses. That's a conversation the council has yet to have.
So for the rainy day, for the rainy day fund, is that part of this year's budget? Or is it going to be next year's budget?
So the rainy day fund is always sitting there. It's a savings account that is always waiting to be used when it's needed. So sometimes, go ahead.
And then the 2.8 will move over, if we don't use it, over to the next fiscal year. Is that correct?
Or the council can say, we're going to keep that 2.8 million in a holding account for another year.
Thank you.
Of course. The other question was, how does the council access the holding accounts? The council, by state law, has to have a budget amendment to change funding, which would include using the holding account money. There are certain steps that have to be taken. You have to announce it to the public in advance. You have to have a public hearing so anyone can comment on it. And then the council holds a briefing, sometimes multiple briefings, to talk about what they want the funds to be used for and discuss that with the mayor and her administration. The council can do a budget amendment at any time during the year. And then
I'll just add, oh, sorry, Ben.
The last question was the impact of the prison. I'll let Jen chime in on this one, but I think it's a little too soon to say since the prison hasn't opened yet.
Yeah, I think sorry, back on the holding account really quickly, and then I'll go on to the funding our future thing. The other, I think, hope that the council had for the holding account is because in the middle of the budget adoption last year, we knew that there were going to be, the council knew that there were going to be lots of recommendations coming, some of which might cost money, some of which might not, and wanting to be able to respond to those recommendations quickly without knowing sort of what the city's revenue picture was going to be, I think especially because of COVID, the council wanted to at least set aside some. And so I think it's safe to say that even though this commission might come up with recommendations where maybe you don't necessarily say that this training costs X dollars, one of the things that the city can do to respond to the recommendations is look to those dollars in the holding account to implement recommendations to the extent possible, right? On the funding our future thing, so the impact of the prison to the budget was positive because the state law came with that extra sales tax authorization, which typically the state does not allow us to increase our sales tax revenue. So it was kind of a once in a generation opportunity to increase the city's sales tax revenue. Normally, we're just sort of subject to market forces of what happens to sales tax. So,
and to give answered your question, to give a magnitude, that additional sales tax was $33 million in 1 year. So it's like taking the city's general fund and increasing it by 10%. So that was a big, big impact for the city's budget. I'm sorry to keep you all staring at a
No,
data
it's just the
table
I
this
saw
morning.
Commissioner Powell had a question, I think. Commissioner Powell.
Yeah, what was the percentage increase on the 33 million from the sales tax?
It was about a 10% increase to the general fund budget, not the total budget for the city.
Okay.
And it was a 0.5% increase for the city's portion of sales tax, if that makes sense.
Perfect.
So right now, the city, before the Funding Our Future tax, it was we would collect 1% of every bill, for city sales tax. Now we collect 1.5%. And there's a few items that are exempted from that, but in general.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Oh, and then my question in response to Dante, it kind of piggybacks off of Commissioner Davis's comment about the state prison. Obviously, there's knowledge of a state prison being built within our city, extending far longer than a year, and planning for that. So I'm just kind of hearing that we used a percentage increase to Funding Our Future around the same time period that there's state collaboration with the city to build a new state prison. And my concern with that as a commission member addressing racial inequality is we know racism runs rampant in the judicial and court system. So was there any concern when deciding to hire more officers that would lead to over-policing of marginalized communities and thus exaggerating the efforts of building a new state prison on the west side that's depreciating the housing value of west side residents?
Yeah, I'll just pipe in. The two decisions were separated, and it was absolutely not the city's decision to build a new prison, and the city fought it mightily, but ultimately we are very, very I don't know how to say this appropriately, right, for a public meeting. The state made the decision of where and how to relocate the prison.
Would you be able to give me a name in particular as to who you would have to work with on that state end as who gave that?
Well, they're already building it, and so it's already done. But it would be Republican state leadership. I would recommend reaching out to, and the governor.
Like the governor himself and the Board of Corrections and whatnot?
Yeah.
Okay.
There was actually a commission to relocate the prison. If you Google Utah State Prison Relocation Commission, it will pull up the state lawmakers who were on that commission and made the recommendation and the decision.
Perfect. Thank you. That's very informative. I appreciate it.
Yeah. We were very, and I think the council member representing District 1 was very frustrated.
So I think we already touched on a lot of questions. Happy to take more. And if you think of questions after tonight, let staff know, and Jennifer and I are happy to provide further information in writing. Budget is what we do, and it's pretty much a year-round process. The last thing I have for you are the links in the lower right corner. They're hyperlinks, and this is if you want to learn more on any of these particular topics. And some of them are updated, so they have the latest and greatest information. For example, the one on the police audit and the one on the city budget for fiscal year 2021, those are both updated, I would say about once a month, based on the mid-year budget amendments that the council is approving and considering, and as the auditors are providing deliverables. So these are handy links, and we wanted to make sure you had them. That's everything we have for our presentation. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much for your time and your informative presentation, certainly.
Let me ask Dante one other question. So if this commission makes recommendations that impact the budget, does that mean we're going to have to wait until a budget amendment is approved before we can access funds?
I think that this is, I'll just chime in with what I kind of think based on some discussions with the chair and vice chair. You typically, funds are not spent until the administration recommends sort of a budget amendment and recommends how to spend those dollars. I think this commission and the work of this commission is just unique, right? It's in a different space, and the timelines of all the different things that are going on and being worked on are not going to line up perfectly with that annual budget process, or not necessarily going to line up perfectly with that annual budget process. And so I think that to the extent that the council can hear from you guys general recommendations, I think that that holding account funding is in part there to help facilitate implementing some of those recommendations to the extent that they need funding, right? Some of the recommendations that you guys make may be more in the policy and ordinance space, which can be done, you know, without funding necessarily. But I think that that was the intention of setting aside those dollars from the previous year.
Yeah, thank you. And I appreciate the question, Reverend. And I think that's a conversation that we as a commission also need to have in terms of our understanding of what our role is with the budget. And, you know, the Langner Group and core commissioners have had this conversation with city staff. And I would suggest just maybe in big picture this, it's not the commission's job to be in the weeds to figure out how to fund a particular item of recommendation, be it training, be it a reduction of this or an addition of this. But the commission recommends what it believes to be in the best interest of its communities, and the council and the mayor need to figure out how to fund it or defund it for that matter, but not to figure out, okay, well, if we take this money from here, we have to add it, or where are we going to get that? That's not our job. One, because we don't have enough time, nor the expertise to do that. And so I would suggest that hearing that this money is set aside is a blessing, to know that there is money. There was foresight in the fact that we will be making recommendations that had budget implications. But it's not our job to be in the weeds of figuring out where that money should come from in balance to taking it from somewhere else.
I wonder briefly, budget-wise, and it dovetails a little bit with what Dante is saying. There's also wraparound services or additional overlapping structure, right, with the county and the state that also provide services in Salt Lake City. Is there are any of you aware of repository of that information or those services to help? A lot of the areas, or some of the areas we want to look at, will be beyond Salt Lake City and potentially beyond our our responsibilities as a commission to Salt Lake City, but also would like that information to get to other folks to impact their decisions. So I'm thinking that's a great mental health, maybe other services.
That's a great question. And maybe what we can do is get together with our budget staff and kind of come up with the like a compiled list of the contact points and various resources, because they are really spread out, right? The county mostly deals with mental health things. Obviously, the DA deals with prosecuting things. And so not all of their information is as publicly consumable and transparent the way that we would hope it to be, right? I think everyone's trying to do better to be more transparent with their budgets, but not everyone's, you know, at the same level. And so, but at the very least, we can sort of maybe sort that out and at least have points of contact so that as those recommendations move forward, we kind of know, or you guys can know where to direct them. So if we can get back to you on that.
Yeah, thank you. And I apologize for the clumsy way I asked the question. It's almost 6 o'clock, and so my brain wants to shut down. But but thank you. All those overlapping areas that also complement city resources that we may be able to influence, but we can't give direct recommendations. I think that'd be helpful. Thank you.
And I want to remind folks that the mayor did ask us for anything that lands on the cutting room floor, which I think would encompass anything that we feel like maybe is outside of our purview, but to keep those wrapped into our recommendations and anything that gets put forward so that they can be useful to those that are providing those wraparound services, et cetera. We don't want to exclude them from whatever we submit just because they're not within our purview, because very likely they can be forwarded to the various groups that are handling those.
Yeah, Siobhan, thanks for that clarification. I I'm not implying that we should not be aware of it and should not make recommendations in those areas, but we're more directly accountable and formed by mayor and the council who are requesting our information. And there's a lot of different entities that go into the whole big picture for the locality of resources in Salt Lake City and larger. It could be a part of our reform efforts. I think it'd be good to be knowledgeable about those funding sources and who's responsible for making those decisions and how to get those recommendations out.
I agree with that. For example, such as I know Salt Lake City Police Department receives federal funding, and I'd like to make sure that if there are clear act violations, such as African American men being bit by police dogs, that police dog program is not going to continue into the next year. So that's where our work as commissioners is critical, and applying that to numbers and data. And I just want to make sure that we're carrying that intersectional perspective and we're applying that kind of pressure in those budget meetings. But it sounds like you guys are definitely doing that, and I appreciate the work you've done thus far.
Thank you. Two quick questions for me. One, given the continuing uncertainty of the sales tax and other funding streams for the city, do departments, when they're submitting their budget, has there been any expectation or requirement of a 1 or 2% budget cut in their presentation of budgets? And then second question quickly is, of the 25% of this police department's budget being what you described, and obviously inclusive of that 60-some% of staff dollars, what percent of the PD's budget is 2.8 million?
I'll answer this. Oh, go ahead, Ben.
Do you want to do the first and I'll do the second?
Sure. So let's see. The first question.
Budget cut
in the budget.
Budget cuts. Yes. Sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you. Also past 6 o'clock. Sorry about that. The mayor's office usually provides, direction to departments. I can't speak to the direction that they're going to provide to departments this current year, but I can tell you in previous years, I was a budget analyst during the last recession, and that was absolutely the request from the mayor's office was come, Department X, come with an idea that shows a 1% cut, come with an idea that shows a 2% cut, and then come with an idea that shows additions that achieve your policy goals. Because frequently what happens is that the mayor makes these judgment calls that it doesn't make sense to cut all departments by 1% because that could have unintended consequences, and other departments have more flexibility to cut than some. And so frequently you won't see an across the board 5% cut, but you may see planning have a 2% reduction and police have a 3% reduction, or things like that. I will say that we are watching our revenues closely this year, and while they're down, they're not as down as far as we were worried. And the rainy day fund has certainly helped in that case, that we had a very healthy fund balance before all this started. And so we're hopeful that it won't mean tons of cuts. And all that is to say that increases flexibility for the mayor, council, this commission, to make those kinds of changes, right? Because if all you're doing is having to cut the budget, it's hard to implement new policies when all you're doing is cutting the budget. So, Ben, go ahead with the other one.
Well, before we move from that, there's language that I recall is critical in the Policies and Practices Commission, as where we use the word reprioritize. And that was specifically used not to address the cutting or refunding, but to simply prioritize the current budgets already allocated or are already allocated and approved for this fiscal year, right? So it seems to be more so that like it's not necessarily a gain or loss thing, but that's kind of what I'm hearing a lot of, like we're taking away from or we're gaining. As to where I think the language was very intentional in being used to reprioritize, because it is existent, it's there, but it's just not being used properly. So I thought that's why we were kind of using the analysts from the third party to go into that department budget, really find the things we're hoping to change. But I don't think we're looking to cut anything. And I want to make sure that's very clear to the community watching, that we're not taking away from. Yeah,
I appreciate that clarification. In my like Excel spreadsheet mind, I frequently think just in those pluses and minus terms, but you're absolutely right that in terms of the universe of the city budget, it does not necessarily mean less than or more than. It could just mean shifting. And so our challenge is that, like we were talking about before, and Dante, I appreciate you brought up the 60% figure, because if you look in the police department, it's actually, I think it's closer to like 80 or 90% of the police department
91.
budget, is people. And so that reprioritization is even more complicated because you're dealing with people, right? And so, and if 90% of the budget is already kind of like spoken for with people, you have to figure out ways to reprioritize what those people are doing, right? And because historically the city hasn't tried to just lay off a whole bunch of people, although that's an option too, certainly.
But the data shows we hired more officers, right? Since 2013. And this was the last year that we stopped doing that. So the data shows that everything against essentially cutting police, but we've been gaining more since 2013. I just want to clarify that for the audience watching.
I appreciate that. That's a great point.
For the second question, what percentage of the police department budget does the $2.8 million in the holding account represent? The answer is 3.5%.
Okay, thank you.
And I want to clarify, the 2.8 million is a combination of one-time vacancy savings, to your question earlier, Dante, but it also includes ongoing money that is expected to be available in future years, assuming the city's revenues hold steady.
I want to make sure we get to at least most of the rest of our agenda. So any burning questions remaining for our budget analysts who've done a great job? Thank you.
Would the budget analysts have any interest in collaborating with the youth subcommittee to give us more insight over how you do your work and how we can apply the work we're hoping to do as young commission members to your jobs? I think outside of this meeting.
Would love that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mm-hmm.
And I want to say thank you to the two who've made the presentation. It's been really enlightening.
Yes, thank you.
Jen and Ben. Yeah.
Woohoo.
All right, well, thank you very much for your time and the presentation. And commissioners, you did receive the PowerPoint in your agenda packet this afternoon or whenever that was sent. So you do have that PowerPoint as well as a couple of other pieces of information for the budget. So please take a look at that. All right, thank you. Okay, moving along. The Peace Pact. Hopefully you all had a chance to review that, take a look at that. The Peace Pact is something I sent to the mayor for just her information about what other cities are doing. This is a Peace Pact that was put together by the African American Mayors Association. She liked it, wanted to consider implementation of it, but also wanted thoughts, recommendations, a recommendation from the commission if it was so inclined. So I'd like to spend a few minutes, if necessary, to get your thoughts on that, or if you all know it's a yes or a no, we can go there as well. But just to hear your thoughts, hopefully you've had a chance to review it, but the Mayor's Peace Pact for community-centered policing. Thoughts?
I jumped on it. I saw it and read some of it, and I first off, I love the community policing idea, but I love the fact that we are hearing information from other mayors around the country and what's going on. So I was definitely ready to write back and say yes, but I told myself to contain myself.
Thank you, ma'am.
And I didn't get a chance to look at it, but so I would suggest that at our next meeting, we take some action on whether we want to recommend it or not.
And when was this sent out? Can I clarify that real quick? Has it with the date and time?
I'd have to look specifically, I think 2 days ago.
Okay.
It's been sent, I think, at least twice.
Can we try to do a 1 week? I know time is short and things are fluid, but I have finals and midterms going on, and I get 15 emails a day, and I have things to read and policy to examine. It gets very lost with the youth subcommittee. As a lot of us are working during the day, and piggybacking off of Commissioner Shiflett's thing. So I'll do better to look at the recommendations and the agenda setup, but obviously it's not working because you asked earlier who had time to review these documents, and a large part of the quorum said they didn't. So I hope we can find a more proactive outcome to that issue. And me personally, I'll make sure I take a proactive approach to checking my inbox more often.
It was according to
The
Commissioner
reason I
Hawkins.
say that is because I just want to maximize our meeting time. And if we have to keep pushing agenda over to next week, then it can drain the city's resources financially.
Understand. It was sent out as soon as the mayor asked that it be sent out. So that was all we could do. So
Yeah, it was sent out Monday around 4:00 p.m.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I don't.
I like the idea.
I don't think there's a timeline attached to it. I don't think that there's an issue with taking action at the meeting. Is there, that you know of?
not that I'm aware of, although, well,
It sounded like it was.
I don't know. We don't meet as a full commission again for several weeks.
Yeah.
We could make the recommendations within the subcommittees to do that. If we do it by email, then I mean, technically we can make a decision by email with the quorum. We can, but I'll defer to Cindy Lou and her thoughts on that. I know she's not happy with it already, but I'll wait for her to respond.
No, that's not it at all. I certainly, yes, you may make a decision via email. Sometimes it's more difficult when there's a large group trying to make that decision through email and the back and forth. You can also wait until your next meeting. So we'll follow your lead.
Thank you. I understand this time is critical, Commissioner Powell. We went to every few weeks, but the committee meetings are happening every week.
But to be clear, we can't make any major decisions in our subcommittee meetings. So
that's correct.
I've been having to discuss with Josh multiple times of begging even administration within the department to be available longer than 8 minutes in my subcommittee meetings. So there's a reason I'm saying time is of the essence. And it's recorded. Chief Doubt saying he has 8 minutes to meet with me during my subcommittee meeting. That's why I'm frustrated as a commission member of I'm making myself available for these meetings, especially as a young person and a youth. And I'm being told I have 8 minutes to meet with people in subcommittee meetings.
Well, he was there the whole meeting. He had to come to another meeting, but he was there the whole
so
committee
that's
meeting.
the issue then too, is how are we maximizing time spent? Because I don't have enough time to talk to him about my concerns with the policies and practices of his department. And I talked to the mayor about this in person already as a mentor. So it is a time at hand issue. We're increasing funding for this commission to be formed. And originally the demands of the community weren't for a commission to be formed, but for money just to be defunded and people to be fired. So I talked to her about that as well, and I brought that up last meeting. But right now we seem to be caught in a time loop of now waiting even additional weeks to make major commission meeting decisions. And there's things such as happening at the state legislative level, such as the House resolution to demand racism a public health crisis in the state of Utah. That's actively going on, and I haven't had any opportunity to raise that in this meeting, nor any of the REP commission meetings, but instead I've been working offline with city workers such as David and other people. So that's why I'm saying we don't even have a strong collaboration going on with us as commissioners, because we meet via this or we email each other. But everyone, I feel like we're treating this too much as a job and not enough as a volunteer-based aspect where we need to make ourselves available. The police officers that are getting paid overtime to be at our policy meetings should be volunteering to do that, because I'm volunteering to be here myself. So it seems to be like I'm irritated, and a lot of the youth subcommittee members are irritated. And if more of them were here today to voice that input, it would be helpful. But unfortunately, we're caught in a perpetual cycle of obstacles and then main commission meetings, and we're not getting anything done. In terms of giving the mayor her recommendations, that was beneficial, but we maybe went over 3 policies within the SLCPD police manual. 3 policies is not an equitable position or outcome to addressing inequitable policies for 400 years plus of oppression. So we are moving too slow. That's my belief, and you can contradict that point, but I'm observing what I'm seeing. And we're not really getting much done, and we're not getting much done in collaborative effort with the state legislature and people like Representative Hollins, and making sure that we're doing a joint collaborative effort on making sure we address racism as much as we do COVID here, because it is a moral crisis and it is an existential crisis, but there's not that same amount of pressure being put on. We put people on lockdowns here in the state. Why are we not putting more pressure on declaring racism a public health crisis? It needs to be done. I'm sorry to
Hey,
be on my
Dante,
soapbox.
I don't think I think some of us were able to read that Mayor's Peace Project, and so I'd be willing to talk about it. It was sent out, and so we all don't get to read all our emails. Sometimes we get what we can. I know I spend a lot of time in this commission, so I know some of us are willing to talk about it. I would be willing to go at least discuss part of it, and then we could either wait for another time to make a recommendation or not. But I think we could still move forward, at least today.
Yeah, at the very least, it's on the agenda for those that did have an opportunity. We could share our perspective and our thoughts on it, decide if we're going to move forward or not on it, but at least we'll have an opportunity to get these conversations started, and if we follow up later, whether it's in subcommittees or emails, at least we'll have a foundation. I think we should.
I agree.
I'm wondering if everyone hasn't seen it, how can we, has the majority seen it? Maybe that's what we should do. Let's see, how many people have been able to read it and see it before we can make a decision on moving forward. I'm just throwing that out there, because if the majority hasn't seen it, then I don't know how we can make a decision. Yeah. I've seen some of it. I haven't been able to read all of it, but I have seen some of it.
I second that, same as you, Cal.
Yeah, I had a chance to read through it, and truth be told, I get upwards of 80 to 100 emails a day, but I did manage to read through it, in my spare time. And I agree with Commissioner Shiflett on that route.
I also had a chance to read it, and I thought it was great. I like the accountability that the mayors have, that this coalition of mayors have, and the transparency that's there. And so I thought it was great.
Yeah, same here. I thought so too.
I did review it too, and what I really liked was the George Floyd Justice Policing Act. I did like the outlines of that and how it was identified. So I did take a look at that as well, and I did like it.
I also wanted to address one thing that Commissioner Powell said. I kind of agree. We were going over the policy and procedure, and we have not moved forward. We haven't had time, simply because, me personally, I'm still stuck on number 1, and I can't move beyond that. So I don't know how we can even do that. I don't know what the time frame is, but it's very hard when you're still addressing the top 3 things that we've come across. So unfortunately, we haven't been able to move far because we're stuck on language. In my opinion, we're stuck on language.
Mm-hmm. No, thank you, Commissioner. I appreciate that. And yeah, I could offer my thoughts on that, but I'll save them. I'll just say sometimes it's not in our best interests to try to get into the weeds. There's in an 800-page document, I'm sure there's more than 3 policies that you want to address. But I would also suggest that there could be recommendations in the broad sense of demilitarize the police, and some examples of what that might look like without having to create a policy that says that. So just as an example, at least kind of my thinking of maybe stepping back to a broader perspective a little bit might help some of that move forward. But again, I trust Josh, and I'm not facilitating that subcommittee, but maybe just a way to think about it.
I would personally appreciate you being there, Commissioner James, if you wouldn't mind. I think a lot of, or at least Ephraim and I would be very appreciative. I think also Mark Cottrell has been very helpful, and we're very appreciative. But things such as Graham versus Connor and use of force standards and the language of policy of that nature is critical when we want to address key features of major concerns in the community, right? Like, what is reasonable? We've been stuck on what is reasonable now for probably months. And I can guarantee you that my definition of reasonable in my community is very different from the creators of the policy that created reasonable within the department and probably within the city. And so when we're trying to address the interaction between state legislative efforts, that's where it's critical, and that's where I keep applying that pressure again, because nothing can be done on a policy. We want to do culture change more than anything else, but culture can't be changed unless policy is there to reinforce it as our foundational perspective. And that's my belief. That may not be a shared belief, but I think policy is going to accomplish more. And we saw what policy did with the mayor's office through her executive order. We saw 30 officers resign from SLCPD a month later. So that's why I'm saying, like, almost all of our emphasis should be solely on policy, because do we want to focus on retaining our officers? Yes. Do we want to focus on providing equitable solutions and outcomes to both the department and also marginalized communities and community members? Yes. And so that's the reprioritization aspect. And if I'm going to get heated with like the city budget people about reprioritizing and calling them out on their language, then of course, maybe we need to get caught in the weeds of language within police department policy and what that means. Because when we go to a state court and Mark Cottrell's the attorney for the police department, he's interpreting what reasonable means. And right now, I think
no. The courts interpret what reasonable.
Oh, sorry, thank you, Nicole.
He'll argue what reasonable is, and opposing counsel will argue what reasonable is, but ultimately it'll be the trial court and then the appellate court who decides what reasonable is.
Thank you.
So the clarification there, but basically that, like, are we going to see 30 officers resign as soon as we address a new policy that creates proactive or progressive measures within the department? And then how is that going to affect the new policies that we're hoping to implement also, right? As proactive measures. Like, if someone doesn't align with that on a cultural perspective, they could just quit their job tomorrow. What's our plan and our perspective to make sure that we can make sure we still have positive, proactive community policing efforts? Because right now it seems leveraging and it doesn't seem like accountability and transparency to me.
I appreciate that. And I know we're getting late. I'll just say this. For me, and this is just my personal approach, in terms of changing culture, which is what we're talking about doing, essentially changing culture, it's a three-legged stool. It's who you hire, how you train them, and what are the policies that tell them what they can do, and how do you hold them accountable? All of that creates and modifies or changes the culture. And so I think that's what we have kind of broken ourselves up into in terms of the subcommittees, which I think, if done well, can create culture change. And that's just me. But that's what the work of the subcommittees, I think, is in a big picture trying to do. And we can talk about how well that's happening. I don't think right now is the time to do that. We can do that in the subcommittees and see if we are heading in that right direction. Let me get back to the Peace Pact for a moment if I can. Peace is an acronym in this for those who haven't had a chance to read it. Peace is an acronym. P stands for provide transparency. E stands for evaluate and revise policing related contracts and policies. A stands for advocate for federal policy changes. C stands for create robust community engagement. and E stands for enact budgets that reflect community values. So I think all of that reflects, maybe besides the federal policy changes, but reflects what we are trying to do and providing transparency, dealing with the budget, talking about community engagement, improving that, and revising contracts and policies. So I think that is a piece of all that's within this document. So just to give those who haven't had a chance to read it, the overview, if you will, and then each of those acronym letters have detail about what that looks like. So, and I don't think that there is a specific timeline by the mayor. Obviously, she would like to do it sooner than later because she seems like a woman who likes to get stuff done. So I would just suggest that maybe we can do this either by email or at next Wednesday's subcommittee meetings. Each of those subcommittees makes their recommendation, sends it to me, and then we can do that and put it together and send it to the mayor. Your thoughts on the best way to approach that? We can do it by email through the rest of the week, or wait till Wednesday to do it as a subcommittee and then put it all together.
I personally have a lot of emails from REP in general, and then of course all the other hundreds from other contracts. I would be fine with doing it on the subcommittee. I think for y'all that have not seen it, it's fairly easy to look at and to go over. Again, I would support in general the peace plan itself. There's a lot of pieces there that we would have to adjust for our community, right? For our police department, for our city. But in general, I think it's pretty good. I think it'd be pretty easy for y'all to be able to look at it and support or not. And so I'd be fine with just pushing for the subcommittees and then pushing it to you, Dante, and then you could inform the mayor if that'd be cool with everybody.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Same,
The
I agree with
subcommittees.
George's as well.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a consensus on that.
That aligns with the youth subcommittee's concern of data sharing from the commission right now as well.
Okay, so is there anyone opposed to doing it in the next subcommittee meeting on Wednesday? Okay.
I'd just like to share the whole group that I see a lot of positives in this Peace Pact. So as you review it and as we discuss it next week, I agree if we don't have enough members who've read it, it'd be challenging to make a decision right now. But I'd still like to just throw out that I see a lot of strengths in it. I see it as good guidelines that many of which we're already doing in this commission, one of which is to develop a commission. So I see a lot of overlap between the recommendations in the Peace Pact, in Can't Wait, and quite frankly, in some of the discussions that we've had as a group here, because I do see a lot of healthy things that we're getting done as a commission. We're not done, we're not at the end of the road, but the connection between the things that we've talked about and some of the concepts in this Peace Pact, I thought were pretty positive for the work that we're doing. So I think I could be on board with supporting this Peace Pact. I think that the word pact is it's an agreement, but it also allows for the developers themselves state that they're guidelines for cities to examine the work in their own areas, right? So I see it as we're willing to commit to creating change in our departments and examining racial equity and being open to, more than being open, that we recognize there's a need for change. And I think that getting that information to the mayor, if she determines to ultimately get on with the Peace Pact, sends a strong message about our city and our commitment to creating change as it relates to race and equity. So I do support this. I'm also going to say there's going to be a lot of work to be done to agree on some of the terms in this, to the previous conversation that we had, right? So there's still going to need that detail work, bigger picture conceptually, I support it. I think it makes sense. I think it would be good to send a message from Salt Lake City that we support these types of changes. And I'm happy to discuss it in subcommittee or hear anybody's comments about what I had to say, but I wanted to throw it out at this meeting so you all could hear my perspective, since we'll be talking about it in smaller subgroups.
Dante,
You're muted, bud.
I have, oh, whoops.
No, go ahead, thank you. Go ahead.
I have a question. How long is this commission? Oh goodness, I forgot the word.
Going to remain in place and impaneled?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, no, great question. And that is the question, and it is until the end of June, if I'm correct. Siobhan, correct me if I'm wrong.
July, but one of our
July.
recommendations can be to extend the time. That
Yes.
is just the time that we were given for the initial thing. But my understanding from the city is that that can be something that we bring forward, is that, hey, we'll have a set of recommendations by that point, but we want to continue the work in XYZ time. Allison just popped on video. Are you popping on to tell me I'm right or wrong? Tell me.
Only to confirm what you just said. Thank you, Siobhan.
Thank you, Allison. No, because I mean, with everything that has just been brought up tonight, there's no way we'll meet those expectations by June 30th. So I just wanted to confirm.
No,
That's
yes,
all.
that's a great question. Thank you. I meant to try to emphasize that. I think I've done it in some subcommittees, but that we are moving, time is moving. And so, the recommendation could be to continue to fund this commission's work, right? There's no reason that can't be a recommendation, or even to make this as a standing commission somewhere. So again, thinking big picture and thinking long-term, there's no reason your recommendation can't be that this work needs to continue and what that might look like. Okay. Couple more things before I let you go. We're not going to get through this whole thing, or you'll be late to bed. I want to at least report from the training subcommittee as we go into reports real quick, and I'll jump back to best practices in just a moment. That the training subcommittee will submit its recommendations to the council and the mayor next Tuesday, or is it next Tuesday, March 2nd. And given that it was approved by the entire commission, it's not just a training subcommittee recommendation. This will be the first set of recommendations that goes to council and mayor from the commission. And Commissioner Prospero and Commissioner Davis will be presenting that on behalf of the commission. Allison, did you have, I saw your face.
Just here if you have any questions. And perhaps, I don't know if Commissioner Powell or one of the other youth commissioners would be able to speak to the question of whether you are also going to, members of the Youth Commission are also going to present next Tuesday, or at least have it, I guess it was to begin a discussion.
Yes, so we had a meeting set up with you in which half of us were at work and half of us were in school, as the age demographics vary. So we're going to collaborate and make sure that they, if possible, to even have a 30-minute excusal letter from the city in order to attend that meeting virtually, and make sure we're available to fully meet with you and give you a full report of the work we're doing and hoping to proactively do, continuing past that June and July end date for the commission currently.
That'd be great. I would defer to Coletta on the note that you might need, just because she's very good at these official things. It would be very helpful for us if you can, Commissioner Powell, just shoot us an email with the names of the people who will be at that meeting on Tuesday, just so that we can have those available for the council.
Thank you. And Allison, if you could give us the tentative time frame for the presentation, because I would encourage as many commissioners as possible to be at that presentation.
Yes, it will be shortly after 2 o'clock. It's a little hard to give a precise time just because there is a regularly scheduled update from the mayor's office ahead of that. And so depending on how many things her office needs to go through to inform the public and to inform the council, then that would be, then that'll determine the time. Apparently we can still change the time. I'm getting this note even as I speak. So if it's better for any of you to set essentially a time certain, say, you know, this is going to happen at 3 o'clock, this is going to happen at 2:30, we can do that. So please just let us know.
Thank you. I don't know about anybody else, but later would be better for me. I would imagine better for students as well.
Me too. Later is better for me.
You mean later as in closer to 5?
No, I don't think they're still in session till at 5. But
Actually,
I thought you guys were 2 to 5.
Like 3:30 or 4?
Typically 2 to 7.
Okay.
2 to 7.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, for me it's earlier, but.
Well, when all of you decide.
Okay. But okay, so there's flexibility in the time is the short answer, correct?
Yes, it's easier for us the sooner we know. So
Right.
To the extent you can figure it out and just let us know, that would be terrific.
Okay, thank you.
And Commissioner Powell, if you will coordinate with me, I can work to get you a note. I can work to get you all an official note.
Thank you so much. We would really appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Dante, you were planning to be there with Reverend and I?
Yes. I don't
Oh, I did
necessarily
not know
need,
that.
I don't necessarily need to be, but I would like to.
Because I was going to talk badly about you, so I guess I'll change that message. But okay, so I guess I'll have to coordinate with you as well. Okay,
I think
Reverend, hope you.
I think we should just do it as late as
hope you
possible.
prefer to do it earlier, Reverend Davis.
Right. No, we'll do it as late as possible so you can't be there. Is the real thing. We'll figure it out, Allison. Don't shake your head at us. Okay. And I have to come back to Commissioner Prospero to talk about the best practices. And there's not really time, I don't think, to do that. I would ask, is it possible, it's not something that needed maybe discussion because you were going to present what some of those best practices are, if I'm correct. Yes?
Just real quick, 2 things that we're really looking at. One is the 8 Can't Wait and how does that mesh with Salt Lake PD. And I know there's already some work that the council and the mayor's office already did, but we're looking into more of the weeds. There may be a policy, but does that mean it's being practiced? Does that mean they're being trained to follow that policy? There can always be a policy, but if there's no training from that, and then, well, 1 second, MJ. And then after that, looking at from that CIT, and it was awesome that that budget talked about having money for that social work group. I'm looking at all these different types of these mental health with paramedic teams that going out. There's some pretty good examples out there, and maybe something that we could add to it, like dispute resolution, that law enforcement oftentimes go there and have to deal with neighbors just messing with other neighbors. We don't need law enforcement to probably to do that. So something like that. So those are the 2 major things we're looking at. 8 Can't Wait, and the one is called Cahoots, which has been, I think, this. Oh, and the STAR program, which is, I think, Mariana had brought that up. So those are 2 things.
Those, I thought that the STAR program and 8 Can't Wait was sent out to the commissioners some time ago, but is this information that you can submit or just disseminate to the full commission so they can get a chance to take a look and maybe have another conversation next time we're back together?
Oh yeah, we could put a quick document to y'all to be able to review.
That'd be great. Thank you. Commissioner Powell?
I would like the commission to know as well that Chief Brown did take proactive measures during the George Floyd protest to review the 8 Can't Wait campaign, as well as the Campaign Zero here. And Chief, I was wondering if you had any questions or comments about, my question is, are you being invited to that roundtable with the mayor to make sure your department input is being upheld with these new things and whatnot? What's your perspective? What are you thinking? What's the thought process of the department with these?
Commissioner, thank you. We did look at, am I on? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, we did look at a lot of those things several months ago. But I still think the conversations need to be had. They're great principles and great ideas and great training. But again, there are so many things that people are throwing at us saying, what about this? What about that? We really need to prioritize as to what, and I think the commission, your goal is to help us, identify the best of the best. What are the top three that you feel, we need? Because we only have so much time. We still have to do a job out on the street. And like Dante, you talked about earlier, sometimes every time we pull officers in to train or in the budget presentation, that's less officers out on the street taking the calls that we need to do. So it's a great conversation and there's a lot of things to discuss. I would be more than happy to be at any discussion or roundtable to talk about these things and help prioritize our efforts. We're committed to it. There's so much right now.
I agree with you and I appreciate your comments sincerely. Thank you.
And this comes back to mind, and I don't think I said it to the whole commission, but of the recommendations we made, one specifically being that all officers should be CIT trained, including those who are lateral hires. Chief Doubt, Assistant Chief Doubt at the most recent subcommittee meeting said he wasn't waiting till that recommendation was formalized or approved, but he had just signed an order to that effect that all officers would be CIT trained. So again, kudos to you as a testament to the work the commission is doing, that a recommendation has already been accepted and is already moving forward. So kudos and a testament to your work and to the police department.
Thank you so much. Are you there, Chief Doubt? Oh, okay. You're home. Thanks.
I doubt it.
I hope I didn't scare him too much earlier. There's
That's
all
good.
lots there still.
Sorry,
Thanks, Chief Brown.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So just in terms of subcommittee reports, just very briefly, I would ask if you have any. Training subcommittee is taking on the work and looking at the hiring process and has asked for some information about the hiring process. And so we would be looking at that recruitment and hiring process for new officers. So other school safety, Siobhan?
Nothing to report to the full commission just right now. We have a lot of great things in the works, but nothing to bring to you for your consideration just today.
Thank you. Policies, Josh?
Josh had to coach his kid's basketball game.
That's right. Yes, I saw the text message.
He's not.
Okay. A member of the policy subcommittee want to offer any thoughts on where it is or anything important to the full commission?
Steve, that's you.
Nothing at this time. I don't think we have anything.
There's two Steves.
Okay.
I kind of agree with Steve. We're kind of still stuck.
Okay. Thank you. And is that everybody? Youth subcommittee, sorry.
Wait. There was the approval of the survey. We did hear that at the last commission meeting.
Okay.
That's it. So
That'll go to all the officers?
Yes, as soon as we figure out how it's going to be conducted. I found the list of questions and I sent them to Josh. So hopefully he's compiling them.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Powell?
Thank you for being patient with me this evening, commissioners and city staff and everyone. As you know, this is pure passion for me, nothing more, nothing less. House Joint Resolution 13 is currently up at the state level. And today, David from the city informed me. He's been very helpful in helping me understand the diplomatic process and how this works. Joint Resolution would basically declare racism a moral and public health crisis, and it passed the Health and Human Services Committee unanimously with one committee member absent. And the positive thing about that is we believe this can be the foundational policy reform or bill that would essentially give us as a commission a lot of work to navigate and move through the intersectional spaces of what we're looking to address, especially outside of policing when we want to give our recommendations, right? So when we look at that intersectional component of the education system and the criminal justice system, making sure that there's an equitable foundation to understand that racism is just as much a public health crisis here in the state as COVID-19 is. And that's the same reason you saw hundreds to thousands of people protesting across the country during the peak of a pandemic, because some people are more worried about some outcomes than others. So we are in very strong support of this bill. I've heard from David and other city staff, maybe that I'm not sure who would help speak on David's behalf today about the work maybe going on in collaboration with the city and the state at this point. Is there anyone that would be able to speak about that?
Well, before we go there, if I can ask, is it your intention to ask the commission to do something about the bill?
Yeah. Oh, yes. So I would strongly encourage the commission members to review this bill and to critically examine the language used in this bill, as it would give us reasonableness to pursue standards in reforming other state bills. For example, use of force and the Graham versus Connors standard at the federal level, declaring racism as a public health crisis and understanding that the policies created here and existing here may not be foundationally appropriate, and that maybe something needs to be done if this is approved, right, at the state level, if it's approved. But right now, I'm currently asking commission members to review it and to hopefully maybe we can work in collaboration with drafting a document about how important that bill is to our work and what we can hopefully do with it if it does pass. That way, you know, Representative Hollins can read that at the state level. And I'm not even sure Republican leadership understands that this commission is formed and that we're trying to achieve certain areas of work that we are. So maybe if we worked in collaboration with them, there would be more of a positive outcome to that bill.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I guess my only comment, having had some tangential conversation about this and knowing vaguely enough the politics of Utah, similar to the politics of Colorado, that Salt Lake City, like Denver, is its own island, and everybody not in the main city is not really happy with the main city. And so I would just suggest maybe it's a conversation first with Representative, is it Hollins? Hollins, to see if it would be beneficial or helpful to her trying to move the bill forward. We could certainly, and I'm not suggesting that the commission couldn't take a position on it or write a position on it, but would it be beneficial to her to do that? Because does the Republican legislators even care about what this commission thinks?
I agree with you, Dante. I think that is the most prudent way to go, is to reach out to Senator Hollins and get her take on how we can best help her, if at all. I would follow her lead on that one. She's excellent at what she does. She knows that arena better than I do by far, and I would defer to her better judgment on that for sure.
And to comment, she did meet with me and other community grassroots organizers days after the George Floyd protests. So this, I do have a strong belief. I'm not going to speak on her behalf, but I let you know as someone who's grew up in a congregation with her and has talked to her about many of the things occurring in our communities, and especially over the district she represents, that this bill would probably be applies very strongly to the work we're doing.
Oh,
well, I'm not suggesting that it doesn't. I'm just suggesting, would it be beneficial at all for this commission to take a position on it for her? That's all I'm asking.
That makes sense.
Agreed. Yeah. No, it's a great resolution. And personally, as Nicole Salazar, attorney at law, I support it. But as a commission, I'd want to find out from Senator Hollins if we would help it, because I don't want to see it fail.
Being from liberal Salt Lake City, it may actually be a detriment.
Yeah, that's the other issue to consider, right? Okay, I think we've covered the majority of our agenda for this evening with lots of in-depth conversation that is absolutely appreciated. I think we have a couple items. One, to address the Peace Pact at the next subcommittee meeting. I will endeavor to attend a couple of the next other subcommittees as well, just to see if there's any way that I can be of support and benefit to being there. I have to tell you, I've been invited. It's not like they haven't asked me to come. So I honestly have been wanting to let them do what they do best, but I'm happy to come and participate as much as I can or as best it might be helpful. I will also send out the email to Larry and connect each of you who have said that you would be representatives or connectors to your communities to do the next listening sessions and see if we can make those happen. Please answer the email from Coletta that you're going to receive if you haven't received it already about tomorrow's safety briefings from Lieutenant, and those will happen. She's also going to get you the emails about the Partner Pair program. Please wade through your hundreds of emails if you're interested in that and find it. I'm sure she will capitalize it as an action item for you so that you can distinguish it from others, hint, hint, and see if we can move that forward as well. Anything I'm missing from action items from us, you or me? Cindy Lou?
I don't have an action item, just a clarification.
Yes,
that
please.
on March 2nd, the invitations for the council meeting will go to the Reverend Commissioner Prospero, Dante, and the facilitators in the youth subcommittee, so that we don't have a quorum in the council meeting. And we encourage the monitoring of the council meeting through the YouTube broadcast or Facebook broadcast.
So, okay, I guess my question is there harm in having a quorum when they're not doing anything?
No. If you want to have them, if you want everyone to receive an invitation, we just need to put them on the invitation list as panelists.
Okay. I guess I would just ask the commissioners if it makes a difference to you whether you're on camera with council or watching it on YouTube. Would you prefer to be on camera with council or not?
I'd also just read it's an open invitation. So these are the folks who've expressed that they have something to share with the council this week. and we can rotate that as well over time. So another approach.
But I guess I'm basing it on the idea if we were in person, we would probably have a whole bunch of commissioners in the chambers supporting the work of the commission. Watching YouTube is not the same thing. So that's why I'm making the distinction.
Would be very powerful to have us there in attendance.
I have Human Rights Commission on March 2nd, so I don't think I'd be able to make it anyway. So that, yeah, I'd love to, but I don't think I'll be able to make it with Human Rights Commission at the same time.
Dante, if I could, I'll just go ahead and coordinate any posting that needs to take place, but you're right, it's an open meeting, so we can extend the invitation to all of the commission, and I'll just make sure that those email addresses are provided to council staff.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay.
Could I unmute in the meeting and echo Moises during his presentation? So that would make a difference for me where I want to be.
You're lucky this is a public meeting.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time and the engagement today. Much appreciated, and we'll just continue to do this work and hopefully reach the outcomes that everybody wants. So let's just keep doing what we're doing. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Comment from the chief.
Thanks, y'all. Thanks for letting me be a part of this.
Comment from the chief, Commissioner James.
Can I just add one comment? And I think it would be very, I think you'll like this. Look, this week, we welcomed 26 new recruits to this department, 10 of which were from a diverse background. We had 20 new FTOs start into their training this week. 7 were from diverse backgrounds. Okay, we'll just end on that high note. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you, Chief. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Can I say something really quickly? This is Darlene. So I did an interview with SS Utah, and I did give you a shout out, Chief. So listen to it.
Okay.
Don't listen to the interviews that I talked about you, Chief. See y'all.
Thank you, everybody. Bye now.